Welcome to this week's Endurance for Everyone podcast.
This week it's just Rob, and I'll be interviewing Sean Meehan, a cohort of Megan's Colin Fanning. While recently talking with Megan on episode 100, she let me know about Sean and his participation in the Laurel Highlands Ultra. If you remember, John and I had discussed the Laurel Highlands hiking trail on episode 85, where I recapped hiking the trail with my family. I also said that I would like to talk to anyone who has completed this ultra, and today I get just that chance. Sean, let's get into it if it's okay. First off, thanks for coming on the show today, and let's find out a little bit about you. How long you've been running? Let's little details, and then what led up to what I consider to be one of the most epic things I would ever consider doing in my lifetime. So, turn it over to you for a bit.
Hi Rob, how you doing, man? Thanks for having me on.
I'm great, thank you.
As far as I guess me, I started ultra running and running distance really only about 6-7 years ago. I grew up with a competitive swimming background, and much like a lot of us, that later in life we life changes, life happens, and I got vastly out of shape. I'd gotten out of the Navy, started a new job, and I put on a whole bunch of weight, and I needed to do something to change that. So I basically I started running because it was easy. It's like right out your front door, you put on a pair of shoes and you start running, and it really became an addiction for me.
It tends to become an addiction for most of us. We all like to start with, oh, it's easy and it's free. I can just go right outside. It just takes shoes and that's it, and I can go. And you may or may not have fallen prey to it, but then it's new shorts, then it's new shirts, and then you need your running watch. And a lot of people tend to get really ingrained into this, heavily invested, I should say, into this free sport. So did you fall into that path and anything, or are you still like pretty much a free runner out there?
Oh no, I have me and John on a pretty regular basis in the ZENDURANCE athletes page. Generally talk about gear. I'm what Megan refers to as her gear guy, or a gear whore, as she calls me at times.
Nothing wrong with that. So let me ask you. Just ask you, what are you, like one of the Phoenix 5 guys, or what hardware are you rocking right now?
I have the Phoenix 5X on my watch, my wrist right now, as we speak.
If we look down, there it is. Okay.
Yeah,
I just like to know what kind of caliber we're dealing with here. Because I'm still, when I say still, I am just now, as of a few months ago, rocking the 920 XT. I'm always like about 2.5 generations behind. So I like the new toy that's new as of 3 years ago. So, but totally, hey, works for me.
The 920 is an awesome watch. So
Yeah, it's hard to want to upgrade. They rolled out with, what is it, the 735 or whatever, and I debated getting it because it's just out of laziness, because John puts all my workouts in Training Peaks, and then I have to recreate them in Garmin. The new, what is it, like I said, the 7 something, you can click and transport them right across, but obviously they don't push that backwards because they want you to get the new watch. So I just I have to manually create everything and push it. But this show is not supposed to be about me. It's supposed to be more about you. So you told us kind of how you got into it. So did you start with like your regular 5K, 10K, half marathon and all that? I mean, what was the progression for you there?
No, so what happened for me was I went I have some friends that were really big into OCR, and if you don't know what OCR is, it's obstacle course racing.
Okay.
And so I had some friends. I moved back here. Back here is New England area. I live in Connecticut currently.
Yeah.
And I moved back to Connecticut, and I was in the Navy, and I was stationed down in Virginia. And I was physically fit while I was in the Navy. And when I moved back here, I got a new job. I had a baby on the way, new house, all these stressors coming into my life, and I wasn't doing anything physical. And my job went from being in the Navy and being very physical and active, plus like the physical activities I was doing outside of the Navy to being very stationary, sat at a desk, working shift work. So like I said, I ate a lot and I put on a lot of weight really fast. And the impetus to like change happened on a hike. We went on a hike that's it's a pretty it's a pretty hard hike. It was a 7 mile hike, day hike. And I went with two of my friends, and I was destroyed, like totally destroyed on the 6 mile hike. It's the Seven Sisters Trail. They do a trail run there yearly. It's a 12 mile hike, 12 mile trail run. They do the 6 out and back on it.
Okay.
It's been quoted as Runner's World as like one of the most brutal trail runs in the country. It's a huge trail run for a 12 mile trail run. It draws a lot of attention. It's a really grueling trail run, and just I mean, I was just hiking half of it, and I was totally destroyed.
Gotcha. Yep.
And so my one friend Jess that was on the hike with me, she's like, "Listen, I don't know what you want to do, but there's this thing called the Tough Mudder. I'm doing it in November. Do you want to do it with me?" I didn't. I was like, I knew I needed to change, right? Like I knew that there needed to be something to do, and that gave me motivation to start running. And so that was kind of the starting point. So I started with training for a Tough Mudder, and I didn't like running. I didn't grow up liking running.
Okay.
Like I said, I grew up as a competitive swimmer, and in the Navy, I was into weightlifting and mixed martial arts, and running was never the goal. It was always the means to an end, whatever it would have been, some way to increase my endurance, but it was always done in a time frame of I have 15 minutes to run, or I have 10 minutes to run, or whatever the case may be. It was done on a treadmill most of the time.
Yeah.
And that's the way my idea of running existed until then. But with a new baby on the way, and a lot of life stressors, like I said, like throwing on your shoes, heading out the door was super easy. And so I did my first obstacle course race, which was a Tough Mudder in 2011. And then it immediately progressed from there. And by that, I mean, I did that. I signed up for my next obstacle course race, which was probably about 6 months later. I signed up for another obstacle course race, just continuing on. And then I fell in love with the idea of the death race, is what it's called. It was originally put on by it's still it was a race that existed in Pittsfield, Vermont. It was put on by the two of the founders of Spartan Race.
Okay.
And Spartan Race is, for those that don't know, is another obstacle course race series. And the death race is a race that tests you in every way whatsoever, physically, mentally, emotionally. And it wasn't always like the strongest or most fit that made it to the end and completed the race. It was those that were most willing to suffer, those that were strongest mentally, and it really intrigued me in that regard. The race has the race did have an approximate dropout rate of 85%.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty
substantial
high.
Yes.
Yeah, when you have a finishing rate of 15%, that's pretty low.
Right.
The prize for winning this race is like a plastic aquarium skull that they literally just Sharpie on DR, which stands for Death Race, and the year you did it.
That is fantastic.
And the race I did covered 72 hours straight.
Wow. Okay.
So it was very intriguing and overwhelming, and that's essentially what led me into running ultras.
Right.
And that's actually how I met Megan because her husband, um, Bill, was signed up to do the death race, and they both live in, well, they used to live in my area. And so I was looking for people to train with, and I came across Bill and then subsequently Megan because of that.
Interesting how it all comes around. Now, I'm going to ask you, maybe you can just fill in a few of the blanks for some of the listeners here. I know a little bit about some of this stuff, but some of it, in the question, going back to it, now I will say I've only done one obstacle course race. It was a Ruckus put on. It was down in Washington, PA. They were trying to have I don't even know if it's a bigger chain or if they're still on, because they no longer do it down there, but they call themselves the Premier Obstacle Course Race. And that was about a 4-mile run. And I know that there's like the shorter, I forget what the short one is, that's like 5K, and then the Tough Mudders are all about like 10 to 13 mile half marathon distance. Is that right, or am I getting that incorrect? Okay.
So there's several different race venues, and a lot of them have become kind of localized. Mm-hmm. I mean, the two big ones you look at are, well, I guess the three big ones are pretty much Rugged Maniac, Tough Mudder, and Spartan races.
Yeah.
Tough Mudders are generally in the 11 to 13 mile range, at least at the time that I was doing them. Now Tough Mudder has like the Tough Mudder, I don't know what it's called, like a Tough Mudder Sprint or something like that, which is a shorter distance.
Yeah.
And then they also have other events called like World's Toughest Mudder, which is a 24-hour mudder.
Yeah.
Which I've also competed in twice. Is probably not surprising at this point, right?
No, I see how that fits into your personality.
And then Spartan Race, which was, like I said, originally the Death Race was what kind of started Spartan Race. So Death Race is probably not what a normal person does. So how do you get a normal person to do an obstacle course race or some sort of race in that genre? Where you're testing them in all those different aspects of physical fitness.
Yeah.
And so Spartan Race created a race series, which is essentially a 5K, more or less, about a 8 to 10 mile race, and then a 13-mile race or a 13-plus mile race. And those equate to the sprint being the short one, the super being the middle distance one, and the beast being the long distance one.
Yeah. Now, with that, I had interviewed Trevor and Angie from Marathon Training Academy, and Trevor has recently been getting into them, and they actually had, I might get the name wrong, is it Joe DeSantis? I believe he's the founder or like one of the higher ups there with the Spartan Racing. And basically he was on their show and kind of like called like Trevor and said, well, I'd never done one. And he said, well, you're in Pennsylvania, right? Yeah. What are you doing this weekend? I'm sending you a pass. And that's kind of like how he got us guilted into it, like called out. And he had just completed one of each of those distances. And I guess, I don't know if you've done it. It sounds like you've done a lot of these, but I guess if you do like one of each, like the medals interlock, so you get like they combine like a super medal or something. Have you done those and seen this, or?
So yeah, so basically what that is that if you do a sprint, a super, and a beast in the single year, you get like you said, interlocking pieces. It's called the trifecta. You completed a trifecta. Honestly, I've never done a trifecta because I don't do a lot of short distance stuff.
I mean, that's like a training run for you. I mean, why are you even going to put your shoes on for 3 miles? I mean, and I say that sarcastically because I know in the next few minutes we're going to be talking about a 70-plus mile, what I consider death race, and that's, I mean, I could see why you wouldn't go short. I mean, it seems like it could be a lot of driving for something, not a lot of payoff considering what you normally do.
Yeah, like I said, I felt right in line and in love with distance. Like right away, it was all about how far I can go, as opposed to how fast I can go, I guess.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I mean, as things have evolved, that's kind of also altered. I ran my first legitimate 5K like a year and a half ago, after like running for 5 years.
That's a long build up. So I'm assuming, you probably really nailed that PR then.
Yeah, it it was nice to have a guaranteed PR because it had been a while, and it was nice to only have to suffer for about 18 minutes for it.
That's
So
awesome.
that was yeah, it's my progression is probably not the way people normally go about doing things.
Well, there are a number of people, we all know them, we all hear of that one person who their first triathlon is an Ironman, or their first running race is a marathon. So you fall right in with that crew, no doubt. So let's maybe transition for a moment then. So you were doing this stuff, and then how many years into it before you did, when I say your first ultra, like, ultra distance, you can correct me since you are the ultra runner, anything over marathon is technically considered an ultra, but I guess like the most standardized ones would be what, 30K would be your first one, then is it 50 miler after that?
It'd be
Or
50K, not 30K. 30K
50K, I'm
is
sorry.
less than a marathon. Yeah, so 50K, about 32 miles, give or take,
Okay.
is generally the first one, and then there's varying distance after that, right? So 50K is what most people would, I guess, consider a common ultra distance race, and then 50 milers, another big milestone, 100K, 100 miler, and then there's 200 miles, and then there's crazy stuff that are multi-day races like Megan's doing, the 888K type stuff.
So there is a upper limit for you here. Whenever you acknowledge that there's something crazy, so that means one of my questions, as I'm talking to you, I'm just writing notes and just to circle back to it. And I was curious what your farthest race or run has been. If you're going to be one of these like, oh, I run 100 miles a day every day for the last 7 months or something crazy. So, but where are you at? What all distances have you done?
The longest I've done is the Superior 100, which is actually like 103.8 miles, with 28.
In case someone's keeping track, it's not 103, it's not 104, it's 103.8. Okay.
Well, take every bit of credit you can, right?
I would not want to slight you in the least, and I wrote it down, so if I reference it to you later, I know exactly what it is. Oh, that's awesome. You said Superior. Where's that at?
That's it's in Minnesota. It actually runs along the Superior hiking trail. I don't know if you're familiar with that area at all.
I'm not. I didn't know if it was be around Lake Superior. Was going to be my guess.
Well, it is. It is around Lake Superior. It's on the northern side of Lake Superior, and it just kind of wraps around it. And what's really deceptive about it is, right, you figure lake area that it would be really smooth or relatively low elevation gain, and it's not. We did the run, and it was 28,000 elevation gain and descent over the 100 miles.
Jeez, oh Pete.
Yeah,
that's a touch. Yeah, I did a half marathon the other week here, and it was like 1,100 gain or so. I mean, yeah, they're comparable, right?
yeah.
for a warm up.
So that was the same year I did Laurel Highlands.
Okay.
I did Superior.
So with that, then was Laurel Highlands a warm up for like in line, since it's a lesser distance than this, or was this race like, were you figuring the longer distance, figuring a flatter elevation, which it wasn't? Which one came first, which one came second? Like what happened there?
So 2016 was kind of a big year for me. I've been working with a coach for a little while, and my goal was to do a 100 miler, which keeps. So my end goal is to run Western States. The Western States 100. The Western States 100. You're required to run qualifying 100-mile races. It's a lottery-based system, right? Because on a 100-mile race on a trail in the middle of the woods, you can't have marathon-sized field where you have anywhere between 6 and 20,000 people running a race, right? Like there's not the space to accommodate for that. or
No.
the
And
resources available
that would
for
just
that.
crush the point behind. I run trails for fun, never competitively. And the point behind trail running is getting out in nature and actually having a nice trail. If you try to put that many people through it, it's just going to degrade the trail to where no one, it's just going to destroy it. No one's going to be able to use it again. So,
Right. Absolutely. The environmental impact of it is outstanding. So that being said, Western States is the oldest 100 in the U.S. It's like the premier 100-mile race. If you want to get into it, you put your name in the lottery. Each year, your name is in the lottery. You gain, I guess, you gain more tickets in the lottery, so your chances of getting picked are pretty good, or get better. They're currently I think everyone that had put their name in the lottery for 7 straight years got picked this year.
yeah.
And then going downwards, it's like if you had 6 years, it was like you had a 50% chance of getting picked. If you had 5 years, it was like a 40% chance. Then and like so I had this
Now,
requirement.
if I ask one thing, and so it's not out of place when we come back
Yep.
to ask you later, if you then get picked, like let's say you're 3 years in, and I'm just going to go with easy math. Let's just say your third year now, you have 3 entries in there, and you get picked. Okay, assume you're going to go do the race. If you reapply for year 4, are you starting fresh with 1 entry, or do you get 4?
Correct. Yeah, you start back with 1 entry. So
Got it. Okay, so it's a way to make it fair, so that way it's not kind of like one of those once you're in, you're almost guaranteed to be in forever. It resets the clock for you. Okay, cool. Go on.
so Laurel Highlands is a Western States qualifier, which is how I ended up there, and Superior is also a Western States qualifier.
Okay.
So
Now,
2000
ask
and
one thing for you, because naively, I don't know much. When you with these, like, okay, so I'm semi familiar, and I'm never going to be fast enough to like qualify for Boston or qualify for New York, right? Which that's a time based. You can run a USATF certified course, you make the time, etc. Is this more a you complete the race, just kind of proving yourself that you can do it, or are there time goals on these qualifications as well?
most of them, because most of the qualification races are 100 milers. Um, they're or at the low end, they're 100 Ks. Laurel
Okay.
Highlands kind of falls in a range that's between those two. Um, but 100 milers are generally finish the race type qualifications. Some of them
Okay.
have a time qualifying on it if it was like a particularly easy, and I know I'm using air quotes here for easy race.
Yeah.
And some of those may have like a 30-hour qualifier for for an example for a 100-mile race, but you could still be racing 100 miles and still have that the cutoff to DNF the 100 mile could be 36 hours, if that
Right.
makes sense.
And this doesn't exist, so I will make it up. It would be like if there was an Erie Ultra, and I'm playing off of the Erie Marathon. It was my first one. The reason I selected it, if you've ever been to Erie, Pennsylvania, it's on Presque Isle, which is a peninsula, if you will, that sticks off up there. And the total elevation for the entire marathon, I want to say, is 26 feet. You go over the same bridge twice with a 13-foot rise. So yeah, I can see that why they would put a time if something like that existed, because you cannot get much flatter than that. So unless it's on a treadmill and you never move. So, got it. I got what you're saying. Thank you.
So, um, where were we? So,
You
anyways, to
you've
keep my
done both
name,
of these in a year as qualifiers.
yeah. So basically, to keep my name in the pool, I'm required to do 100 miles every 100-mile race every year. That's a Western States qualifier. Um, I didn't know I had done 100 before, and I didn't know what was going to happen going into 2016. I had planned a big marathon, so I did the Jersey Marathon, which is down on the Jersey Shore,
Hmm.
to attempt to qualify for Boston that year. I had been knocked out of the rolling cutoff one year, missed the cutoff another year, and was planning on qualifying then. And that was in May. The Laurel Highlands Ultra is in June, or I think it's in mid-June if I'm not mistaken. And
Okay.
then Superior fell in September of that year. And so I didn't know I didn't know if basically I wanted both of those races, Laurel Highlands and Superior, are both Western States qualifiers. So if something went bad at one, I had another for a backup. Does
Right.
that make sense to keep my name
Yep.
in that pool?
Yes.
And so I went into Laurel Highlands after running the Jersey Marathon, and I qualified for Boston in it, and I had a really good day out there. And and I was, and I'll be honest,
Congratulations on that. First off, before I
oh,
forget to say it.
thank, thank you. And I wasn't, and I wasn't fully recovered going into the Laurel Highlands Ultra. So that's kind of the start of my race. um, so Laurel Highlands, as I was telling you off the air, is it's a really cool, very old school type of trail race. It's been put on for however many years. It was started by like two brothers and one friend. You know, the way you guys in Pennsylvania do things. It was a bet to see like how far they could go, if they could finish it in like one day or what it
Uh,
was. And
I was gonna say, knowing that it's in the southwestern PA, that most likely, like you said, is probably, and we'll talk about it here in a minute. When I told my story about hiking, we started at the center and hiked to the end of the trail, and then
yeah,
till we about the 30-mile mark, and we went to Ohio Powell, and then we started that same mark and went the other way whenever we did it the fall. When it's not the following weekend, when we came back, which was beginning of summer, end of summer, we wanted to see the trail at two different times of the year. And I almost guarantee you that it probably started at that bar in Ohio Powell. Like, hey, there's a trail right up here, and I bet you can't run it. That has to be how that went down.
so
So go on. I'm sorry. Yeah.
yeah. So it's a cool race. And like you were saying about the website, like you go on the website, it's like old school text based website. There's no fancy graphics on it. It's like we have this race. We do a relay race. We do a 50K, and we do the 70-mile race, the entire trail. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
How do I sign
I'm
up?
on the
And then it's
website
like,
as we speak, and literally what he's saying, go check it out. It is laurelultra.com, and it's this tealish maybe background, white text, and there's four buttons, and it's basically like their, if you will, maybe their homepage, and it's like four red buttons. That's the 70.5-mile race, the 70.5-mile team relay, 50-kilometer race, 50K relay, and there's no other hyperlinks anywhere on the page. There's no photos. There's nothing. Whenever you click on it, could not get more basic. Like, I think this might have been the first website ever designed, and they're like, okay, and done.
yeah, it's literally like a DOS based website. You could be like on your Commodore 64 and probably read it.
You can bring it up on an ATM. It's so simple. So, anyways, you were saying, so you went to the website.
Yeah, so I went to the website. I was like, well, this is a Western States qualifier. How do I register for this race? And it's like, registration opens sometime in November. And you're like, oh, how do I find out when this opens? Like, and so anyways, digging through the internet, it generally opens around the Thanksgiving time frame. And what they do is they put up essentially a PDF of the application that you then print off, and you like attach your check to it, and you mail it to them. And if your check gets cashed, that's how you know you're in the race.
That's awesome.
Very, very old school, very bizarre. I mean, I guess not bizarre, but compared to the way
In
things are
today's
now, it's like
age, yeah, in
active
today's
time,
age,
man.
yeah.
It's like anything else, like you register and it's like instantaneous. You see like everything like going on.
Yeah, you
Um,
get the email that says, congratulations, you're in, share it on everything of social media, and they're just like, no, like, hey, if we cash your check, we'll see you in June.
yeah, exactly. And
Uh,
anyways, my check got cashed. I was in. So I start doing research on the race, right? Like, and there's enough blogs written out there for basically any of this stuff that you can get a good feeling of what's going on with the race. So has the layout of the race, and for those of you that aren't familiar, I know that if you've listened to yours, it's a 70.5 mile trail from Ohiopyle to what's the town that it ends in? Do you
Johnstown.
know, Rob?
Johnstown.
Yeah, and in Johnstown. Yeah, and it ends there. It passes through Seven Springs ski area, right? Which is that where you guys
Yep.
started?
Yeah,
Okay.
just past there. We were about mile 30 is where we started. So we were at Seven Springs within the first maybe half hour, 40 minutes of hiking. Yeah, we walked
Okay.
right into it. Yes.
Yeah. So and starting and so there's kind of some logistical things that exist in the race. You're allowed two drop bags. A drop bag in ultra distance racing is basically a at an aid station. Um, you have the ability to access whatever you put in that drop bag, which like maybe like foot care stuff, might be your nutrition that you want to carry from that point forward, shoe change, sock change, sometimes shirt change, whatever the case may be. You're out there for pretty much the majority of the day, sometimes multiple days in these ultra distance races of, 100K, 100 miles. And so changing your shoes is a really, really enjoyable activity. It's pretty comforting feeling to be able to change shoes in the middle of a race if need be, especially if they're
Yeah.
sopping wet. Um, anyways, so you have these drop bags. There's only two drop bags. Mile 32, I think, and 45 are the two places that you can have drop bags, which is a long time to be required to carry whatever you need to get to mile 35. As far as the Laurel Highlands Ultra distance that I did, or Ultra I did, I ran that solo, which I didn't have crew there. I didn't have a pacer. I didn't have any support whatsoever. I just ran from the start of that race to the finish by myself, and then drove myself home. Well, drove myself back to the hotel that I was staying at.
That
Um,
is that is tough, dude. I mean, when I say tough, that is ballsy. That is crazy. That is awesome. I mean, and I'm making guesstimates now on and some assumptions. You could tell me when I say how wrong I am and what your strategy was and how the race went. But for the listeners, for me chiming in, the first off, on the website, it says this race starts at 5 something in the morning. So I'm assuming you're starting with jacket. You're starting with, because it's chilly. It's going to be probably what in the 40s temperature wise at that time of year. When you're starting that race, and then but it's going to get up probably into the mid 70s at least. Maybe higher temperature wise. You're carrying your hydration. Not that it's an easy hike to begin with, or run, but it's rocky terrain, and you probably need a headlamp at that time. And then there's that. I mean, mile what 6.5? What's the did you block it out? I mean, if something stands out in my mind. There was a couple 1,000-foot climb across 2 miles, just in that mile, like 6.5 to 8, and that's just within the first 10K of this trail, and you still have another 28 miles to go before you can hit a drop bag, get some food. I mean, that what you're describing, we did across like 2.5 days of hiking, and you're gonna do that. I'm not saying by lunch, but you're pretty much going to do that by lunch midday to hopefully refuel and continue back out.
yeah. So the way the race starts, so it's a point to point race, which means that I start at point A, Ohiopyle, and I end in Johnstown, right? So the
Yeah.
way that works logistically with no one else supporting you is your car needs to be at the finish line, and then they bus
Mm-hmm.
you to the start line. So like you said, the race starts at 5:30 in the morning. The bus has to cover almost 100 miles to the start line. So you pick
This
up the
isn't
bus.
point to point. It's following a highway. That trail cuts through mountains. There is no direct line anywhere in Pennsylvania.
Correct. So it ends up being so we end up, I think, getting on the bus and heading to the start at we had to be there and have our cars parked and ready to go at 3 a.m. Then you get on the bus and it's, hour and a half, 2 hour long bus ride to the start. You get to the start. It's June, so it wasn't brutal. It wasn't super cold. It was probably I want to say it was probably mid 50s in Ohio Pile, and you're at a essentially
Okay.
it looked like a nature preserve type. There was buildings. There's like a really cool waterfall out there that people were like taking pictures at. Because the sun was starting dusk or dawn was starting to come up, so it was starting to get not light, but you could make out things. It wasn't pitch black, I guess. And the race director
Twilight, we'll call it.
Kind of grabs everyone together, gives his last minute spiel, draws a line in the sand, and they start the race. And it's literally a stopwatch start race and stopwatch finish race. There's no timing mats. There's at different points along the race, there's check-ins, right? So they check in, you have your number like any other race, and they write your number down to make sure you've completed every check-in along the race. As far as the race goes, like you said, 5:30 in the morning it starts. You start. There's a gradual climb. I think you start very runnable. You actually cross train tracks, and in years past, not in the year that we did it, there's a train that comes through there at about 6 in the morning, between 5:30 and 6, and depending on how the train's running, there's been spots where runners have gotten stuck on the other side of the tracks and have not been able to cross over until the train passed by. Like that's the way ultras are. It's the most bizarre stuff that exists, like in the world. Like you hear about those occasional mishaps in a marathon where it's like, oh, the train came and it like broke the field, and it's like such a big deal. And this is just like the commonplace thing that happens in this ultra. Like if you don't cross the train tracks at this time, like there's a good chance the train will be there and you're stuck until the train goes by.
Yeah. You get a nice 7 to minute to half hour break.
Yeah, exactly. And so the trail's pretty nice in the beginning, and that quickly fades away. Has trails in the Northeast, for those that aren't familiar with the Northeast, tend to be rocky and hilly. We like our rocks really impacted in the soil and really jagged so that you can really twist your ankle good on them.
So when you trip and fall, you're going to get all cut up just for the story.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And so my goal was to get through mile 20 before noontime. Because my concern was it was going to get hot during the day, and it did. It got really hot that year. And the biggest climb, I think, is going into Seven Springs, if I'm not mistaken. And it's well, I guess no, it's before Seven Springs, because Seven Springs is about 30, is at the 50K mark. So it was a little before that, and it's a good slog. It's a good 1,500 foot climb, I guess. I wanted to be done with that before it got hot, and then so that was my goal. So I started out a little quick probably, and I got to the climb, and you just kind of slog out the climb, and I was feeling good. We dropped into some areas that you're crossing across some streams and stuff like that before you get into Seven Springs. And I was running with this guy. His name's Ron, and I think he's run the race. He runs it almost every year. He lives in the area, and his goal is always kind of to finish before nightfall. That's his goal. So I was running with him and chatting with him, and I found one of those really nice rocks that twisted my ankle pretty badly. And this was mile 15. And I rolled my ankle enough that I dropped down to the ground, and I was hobbling for a little bit. Um, and as good ultra runners do, um, I was like,
Rubbed some
well,
dirt on it and kept going, didn't you?
kind of, yeah. I mean, I was like, well, the swelling will set in. It'll heal up, or it'll not heal up. It'll stabilize, and I'll be able to go. And pretty much that's what happened. Um, so got up through the climb. Came into there is an aid station at Seven Springs, and it's Seven Springs is a I guess it's a ski resort for you guys, correct? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so and you come into this aid station, and it was literally this is the 50K mark, and it's like a guy and a girl, and there's no crew access there because Seven Springs doesn't want um, a bunch of people like on their property during this time during this race because they don't want a big chaotic mess. So they're very specific in the race rules for the Seven Springs stop there for the Seven Springs aid station that there's like no crew support, there's like no access to it, like you can't like get here, like don't come here. It may be like the easiest spot to see your runner if you are following a runner in this race, but you're not allowed to come here. Um, and it was one of those very like specific like our race is contingent upon people not showing up at this spot um, because we run across the Seven Springs Resort, which is being as it's just top of the ski hill, is a very exposed and warm area, and the temperature was creeping up now, and I had rolled my ankle like I said at mile 15, and I was contemplating at that point dropping out of the race when I ran into the aid station there. Um, and like I said, I got to the aid station. It was a guy and a girl in a pop tent, and they're like, "We have some watermelon here. We have some chips here. There's some cookies and some M&Ms." And M's." And I was like, "Is there anything else? Is there medical or anything?" And they're like, we have some chips. We have some cookies, and we have some water." I was like,
We have
that's
WebMD, and that is it.
I was like, okay. So the 50K race starts about 3 or 4 miles away from there. And so I could have gone down to the 50K start because there was support down there. But I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to keep going. Like I said, my ankle felt stable, but it was bothering me enough that I was contemplating stopping. The heat had really gotten to me. Was it had been a particularly cold winter for us that year, but the transition to warm summer, warm spring was like really fast, and I was not very well acclimated to it, and I'm not a very good hot weather runner to begin with, so that
Right.
made it increasingly difficult. Um, but I came through Seven Springs, and it was okay. I didn't have I got it out, and I knew that at mile, I think like I said 35 or so, I was going to get my drop bag, and I was going to be able to like sit in a chair and like take care of things. And so you come through Seven Springs. Basically, you're at this point. I think you're at one of the highest points in the trail, and so you drop a little bit, um, running downhill for a while, and then you cross over a road, and you're at this aid station about like I said, it was probably about 3 or 4 miles after the last one. And there's chairs there's
Okay.
people there. Um, I mean, runners are like seeing their family and stuff like that. It's like everyone's like really happy, and I like just want to get in my like bag, change out some like food, change my socks, change my shoes. And I sat there for a little while, and I was pretty beat up, and I knew it was about 5 or 6 miles to the next aid station. And I think that next aid station is right before the highway crossing. Um,
Okay.
I don't know if you remember going across the highway. It's the craziest thing there. It might be right after the highway crossing. Um,
Yeah,
it's
and
a
if I'm thinking of what you're thinking of, it's literally like it's only for the walking trail though, but it's a legit concrete overpass with the big bird cage, so you can't fall off of into traffic or anything, right?
correct. Yeah, in years prior, that didn't exist. So they had to. There was like a reroute around the highway, or not around the highway, but around to an area where they could access either through or under the highway, or somehow or another where it wasn't, crossing a 6-lane highway, um, because the bridge had been
Yeah.
broken down. And this is one of the first years that it had been back, um, and and so I knew that if I got there, even though at this point now, like, heat's really hurting me. I guess I should explain. Um, I, not only is my ankle bothering me, but the heat is really, really taking a toll on me. And so I get to, and I know it was the aid station at, like, I think, mile 39, and I was way overheated, um, and I sat in a chair there, and this was, like I said, we're talking about a span of about 5 miles, right, from, like, the last time I changed my shoes to the next aid station, and I was really overheated, and the people there at that aid station were like the best ever. They're like, "Here's some ice for you. Let's, like, just take it slow." And this aid station at this point was like a triage center. There's people that were overheated everywhere. One guy that, like, had, like, gone out that I had talked to for a while was like, "I think I'm dropping here." Another guy that I had, like, literally gutted it into this aid station with, was like, "I don't know if I can go on." And so we're all, like, trying to, like, pep each other up, and, like, "We can do it. Like, don't give up yet. Just make it to the next aid station, right?" Um, and there's something deep inside of me that, like, I see that, and I'm like, well, like, I can go to another aid station. Like, I can do that. Like, these guys may be suffering, but, like, I'm not suffering that bad, right? So, like, you start comparing it, right? Like I feel bad, and, like, I have no idea what I
Yeah.
look like. I probably look at least as bad as them, maybe worse. Who knows, right? But I'm like, I'm not as feeling as bad as them. Um, and so I cooled down. I got some ice, and I headed off, for pretty much the what felt like the remainder of eternity. What I wanted to know from you, did you find did you find that the mile markers, when you guys were hiking the trail, did you guys find them, helpful or distracting? Like, was it like, "Oh man, I can't believe we only hiked a mile at this point," or do you not even
So
remember the
for
mile?
the mile markers were I vaguely remember the mile markers, but, like, once again, you're always looking for the blazes. For anyone that doesn't know, that's, these are just literally what, about 6.5, 7 foot tall spray paint on a tree, which I'm assuming they
Yeah.
came through on horseback and just sprayed them all as you went through. But now that being said, but part of the story is I was the best in shape person in my group, okay, and I was still 230, 345 pounds when I was hiking the trail, okay, so I wasn't struggling anywhere near as much as the middle brother, he was, and my dad. But, once again, my dad's in his 60s, and, he's like, "Well, I golf a lot, so, like, I'll be fine," and, well, it's not quite the same, but, so I wasn't hurting anywhere. I don't even want to compare what I was feeling to what they were feeling. I don't even want to compare what they were feeling to what you were feeling. You know what I mean? So, no, they didn't. It was neither a distraction nor, like a point to get to, because, I was never really at any point. I mean, hey, I was getting sore feet, but of course I was being a jackass, and I was out there in Vibram Five Fingers. You know what I mean? So, like, it's like I hiked the whole thing in Vibrams, and, and an old Army, Alice pack. So, I was doing my own thing. Really, nothing comparable to what you had going on. So, I'd like to know. I mean, Were they encouragement for you, like, yes, another one down, or was it like, I got how many more to go?
So that's the interesting thing. So for those that don't know, the Laurel Highlands Trail is it's a really weird thing. Like you said, there's blazes. That's really common on trails. But the Laurel Highlands Trail, each mile is marked with these stone pillars that have the mile marker on them. So they're about an 8 or 10 inch stone obelisk that's got the mile marker on it, and so you'll see them constantly because you're traveling the entire trail. So they're every mile, um, and at first you kind of ignore them, like they don't exist. You don't think about them, but I will tell you, a lot of people really hate them. I really like them because I was like, yeah, it's another mile done. Yeah, it's another mile. And like I could, at this point, like I was like, all right, that's 35. That's like 36. And then I remember getting to this is like how your brain starts to deteriorate in ultras. I got to mile 42, right? And there's like literally, I'm not joking about this. Maybe it doesn't really exist. Maybe I just thought it did. There was like a circle at mile 42 around the obelisk at mile 42, and the reference is the meaning of life is 42, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And like I like in my brain, like
Yep.
I start rationalizing, like I'm like, oh, this is where like people come out and like hang out and maybe they like smoke their pot and talk about the meaning of life, like like at mile 42, because there was at the well there was like these like literally like it looked like a makeshift campsite was set up there, and like people just like hung out there, and so I remember like going by that and going, huh, that's kind of interesting. And I was wondering if there was going to be like in my brain, like I said, maybe it's preconceived because I was wondering if there's going to be anything here at mile 42 that was different than anywhere else. And anyways, so I'm continuing on like with these mile markers, this gritty single track trail the entire way, except for there's I think about a mile span where you're on a trap rock road that leads from one point of the
Hmm.
trail to the other. It covers a gas pipeline section, and actually, I believe last I read they rerouted that into the woods, so it's now a pretty much 100% single track trail, point to point ultra.
Okay.
Um, so that one section, I remember coming out to it. And this is pretty late in the race now. I'm pretty beat up. I think that might be one of the last aid stations that you come into before you hit the finish. So it's I think around mile 62 or something. Um, and I mean I've been struggling out there all day. I've been climbing through these split rock boulders, um, struggling on these trails. And there's not, and New England trails are different than other trails. We don't like to make the trail wind back and forth up the hills. We just go straight up over the hill and then straight down the other side. I guess I've been
Okay.
told that on the western side of the continent, they make these things called switchbacks, and they are not very common
Yeah.
in New England running or New England trail making. We have a hill here. We need to get over to the other side of that hill. So like what we're going to do is we're going to like go pretty much straight up over the hill. If we like encounter maybe a boulder, we might
Yeah.
like veer off because we can't go straight over the boulder. And that's kind of the way trails exist
Right.
in all of New England. Um, so I've been struggling with this. I get to this essentially road, and I'm like, I have to run this. Like there's in my brain, like I'm like, it's a lot of ultra running is a lot of running, jogging, power hiking, and eating. That's like what an ultra is. And I get to this like essentially road
I like
section. I'm
one out of
like,
those three.
and and I get to this road section, and I'm like, I have to run. Unfortunately, it's like uphill, So I'm shot, and I'm like, I have to run this. Like, it's the easiest section. It's like requires no concentration whatsoever. I just have to shuffle my feet, and it's uphill. And and it had been hot, so we had the summer thunderstorms start to roll through, and I have like lightning crashing on one side, and it's like the wind is whipping, but it's not raining on me, and I'm slogging up this hill, and I get to the aid station, and in the mile and a half that this gravel road section or trap rock road section exists, from where you get onto it to the aid station before you dip back into the trails, um, this storm had completely passed over me, never like got me wet, just like whipped over me. The lightning was coming around me, and I get to the thing, and it's like blazing sun again, like at this aid station, and it's fully exposed. There's nothing to to keep you cooler, protected. And they're telling me about the rattlesnakes that they've seen like going through the area. So so you're tired, you're beat up, and now you have to contend with rattlesnakes and the oncoming darkness. So that was very encouraging. Um, and the
That's always
the
good to
eight
have late in any race, let alone late in this race where, you're seriously risking death on multiple fronts. All right.
Yeah, yeah. And there's another race in PA called the Eastern States 100. There's the trail runs actually by a rattlesnake den that you pass through at night, because it's a 100 miler. So you spend a lot of time running at night, and you actually pass by this rattlesnake den in the middle of the night, and people will tell you that they like can hear all the rattlers as they're passing by this trail, which seems seems insane to me. So anyways, they're talking about this rattlesnake, and I'm like, I want nothing to do with this. I'm like, all right, I gotta go. I'm trying to get in as quick and as closely to being dark as possible. And I have about, like I said, this mile, I think 62 is this last aid station or so. And so I have another 9 miles to go. And it's getting dark. It's getting kind of dark quickly, I guess. And once you dip into the trails, it becomes darker faster, right? So like now you're coming on it's pretty much a pretty good descent for those last miles into Johnstown there. And it's
What I
and it's
remember as well, and on the descent into, I'm sorry, it seems to be a little delay between us here. What I remember going into Johnstown, you were running down a ridge. I'd say running, you would be. We were hiking, but it was really, and I want to say this is where Laurel Highlands must get part of its name, is there was a lot of laurel that you were running through. So when we were there at the time of the year, it was almost like running through almost like a tunnel of foliage, those last few miles.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is interesting because that section, right, you come out, and there's essentially these high laurel bushes that you're talking about, and they do almost encapsulate you entirely. So like I said, it's starting to get dark, and as soon as you kind of come around some of those bends where you have foliage over you, it's now dark, right? Like, and then it kind of opens up a little bit, and then it's dark again. And so I had to put my headlamp on earlier than I probably would have in a different race, because I could no longer see the ground. And it's hard as the race goes on, and you guys know this from running, I mean, any race, your legs get tired, your form suffers, and you start stumbling over stuff that you wouldn't normally stumble over. I mean, like a 2-inch rock may cause you to fall on your face. You just might kick it with your toe and then be down, because everything's kind of a little out of whack.
We've all seen people that, especially I've done it, where you trip and fall in a 5K, 10K, marathon, half marathon, whatever, because you're more shuffling. You're not picking your feet up as you get tired, but you're still on a very tough, rugged trail where it's not flat whatsoever.
Right, exactly. And so I've kind of gotten this out, and I'm honestly I'm behind. I'm far behind what I had wanted to run. And now I'm kind of behind the like I didn't beat the daylight goal. But I'm still. I mean it. So I come across and there's a power line section, and there's just this kid out there, like sitting out there, and he's like, "You guys are doing awesome," and it's probably about a mile and a half from the finish. And the day before, I had gone out and I had done about a mile and a half hike out just to kind of see what the trail felt like and stuff like that. So I knew what the last mile and a half trail section was. And I crossed this power line, and this kid's out there just hanging out and cheering the runners on as they're coming through. And I cross over that section and I do the final drop. And you come by, there's like, I think a really nice lake that you run by. But at this point, I can't see anything other than the weird tunnel vision you get wearing a headlamp. And so I can see about
Yep.
6 feet in front of me and maybe 2 feet on either side of me in my peripheral vision. And I come in and you can start to hear the people at the finish line. And you come across the finish line and it's like, all right, so and so this number at this time. And like I told you, the entire thing was started with a stopwatch and stopped with like a stopwatch. And then you get like they give you they have essentially a memo card that they like put up on the board that shows like where your place is with your time. And then they give you a trophy. A trophy. It's a handmade wooden obelisk of the mile markers that they then later mail you a custom plaque with your name, your finish, and your finish time on it that you can attach to it. It's a cool little trophy there. I sat down in a chair. Everyone was like super friendly. They have what they consider their like world famous chili at this point in the race, and I'm like, give me whatever you have because I was starving. And so I sat there for probably about 2 hours, and I was starting to get cold, and it was now pretty dark, and I knew if I sat there much longer, I wasn't going to be able to drive to my hotel. And so I then got in my car and left. And so that's my trail or my of the Laurel Highlands Ultra.
A few questions, and then if I might ask them, and then and then I want to maybe, and I actually went out while you're talking and got on their website for some of the statistics I wouldn't mind sharing there. What did you do or not do with fueling? Did you carry, I mean, a lot of your own water like in a Camelback, and or did you actually carry real food with you? Because it sounded like it was kind of sparse at those aid stations. I mean, one of them you said was just, watermelon and chips. So I mean, what'd you do to get you through the day?
So as far as fueling goes, I'm super meticulous about race planning, especially because in ultra distance races, especially in the higher distance races, there's so many variables, so many things that can go wrong. I mean, you're talking weather, just your stomach can go south, your feet can go south. There's so many different variables. I try to eliminate as many of those as possible. So I have this aid station is this far, this aid station is this far, this much elevation. I have like spreadsheets that I do. So like I know how far it is, how long it is, and I plan my nutrition accordingly. So I knew going into the race, like I said, aid station, I think I want to say it was like mile 35 and 42 or something like that, or maybe mile 35 and 47. And so I could have a drop bag at both of those stations. So I knew I needed enough calories to get from the start to mile 35 where I could then replenish my calories. My calorie content equates to really like Cliff Bars, um, gels of any kind. Um, I at that time I was using Tailwind in my pack. I don't particularly care for Tailwind now, but I've had some issues with it GI wise. Um, and and essentially the equation I use is about 300 calories per hour of intake. Um, and so you kind of figure out what your pace is going to be between point A to point B. Um, and by that, you know how many hours you're going to be out there. So you kind of figure, well, a gel's 100 calories. So there's 100 calories I need to eat, you know, three of these essentially in an hour time frame, or a Cliff Bar, you know, I'll divide it up and space it out over an hour because they're really really hard to eat when your mouth is dry. Um, and that's 350 calories or something like that. So you kind of do this math here, and then I get into the aid station and I have like a Ziploc bag that has like my next set of nutrition to go to the next drop point, right, where I can pick up more nutrition. Um, and the entire time I'm carrying, I'm wearing at this point I'm wearing a Solomon pack. It's got I think I had a 1.5 liter bladder in it at the time, and I was carrying probably from the start. I want to say I was carrying, um, I want to say it was probably maybe 2,000 calories of food on me, and all like I said, gels, Cliff Blocks, Cliff Bars, um, the squeezy pouches and stuff like that. It's kind of whatever you can stomach while running for long distances, and that's kind of all hashed out in training and stuff like that. So
Makes sense. Some of the numbers I'm seeing out there, and you know, I think it'd be all right with me sharing some of the stuff because it's all right on the website. So I guess public knowledge as well. If somebody was to go out and look at it, it looks to me like you said, it's 2016's year you did it, and if I'm looking at the correct Sean Meehan, I'm seeing that you finished 15th overall at about 16 hours 14 minutes. Is that right?
that's correct. Yeah,
Yeah. So, and with that, as a point of comparison, look at that year. The first place finisher finished looks like in 12 hours 14 minutes. So you were about 4 hours behind them. But whenever you put that into comparison, that you finished over a 5.5 hours faster than the last finisher. Looks like they're showing 86 finishers for that year. The more intriguing thing, and I'm going to go back to their website. I'm not calling it Mickey Mouse, but the very plain. It very clearly, as you had said, what the entry process says. We don't do a lottery. We accept the first 135 people that submit. So, and I guess it's not as clearly vetted as these other goals that you have, like Western states and Eastern states and all that stuff. But the year that you had done it there, overall, it says there's 137 starters, only 86 finishers. And then they give you a finish rate, 62.8% finish rate. Of men, there were more men finishers than women. There was obviously a lot more men starters. Only 64% of men that started it finished it, and there were 70 finishers. So you were 15th overall out of 86 finishers. 5.5 hours faster than the last person. And what I find very, I guess, kind of interesting here for me, at least, looking at these statistics with your 16-hour finish, you handedly beat even a number of the relay teams, and those are people that are out there running it on fresh legs and so forth. So I think that's a heck of a great accomplishment. I mean, I assume you're very proud with this. I don't think I could even finish it, let alone finish it as well as you did.
thank you. I appreciate that. The I'll tell you about the relay finishers. Those are like, and if you run marathons, you've probably encountered relay runners. There's nothing more disheartening than like
Yes.
climbing up a hill, having this guy come blazing by you like at a full sprint, and you're like chugging up this hill and you're dying, and this guy looks fresh, and you're like, what? what's going on here? And you're like, oh, relay runner, okay. And but it's still so like initially disheartening that like someone's blowing by you at like cruising along looking super happy, and you're like, oh, what's going on? But yeah. It was like I told you, it was a hot year that year. So a lot of people. I mean, I told you, like mile 39, it was like a triage center. There was just people like, I'm just dropping here. And mile 39 is one of those like remote access aid stations where they're like, yeah, we'll get you out of here in like 5 hours when we're like packing up the race and we're leaving. You're not like you're not a
you can quit, but you're gonna wait quite a while.
Exactly. And there's actually a lot of race directors in their pre-race meetings for ultras that say, if you quit, you are not our priority. If you are injured, we'll take care of you. But if you quit, you're not our priority. We'll get you when we get you. So there's a lot of cowboy in ultra racing.
Heck yeah. Well, speaking of some lines in the sand, we usually keep these shows about an hour, and I've kept you on here over that, and I think you've been very gracious with your time to do so. But I think it's maybe about time for us to wrap this up, if that's okay. Didn't know if there's any last minute things you wanna say or put out there, or maybe give us an idea what's 2018 looking like for you. Did you get into Western States, or when does that go in, or what do you got going on there?
I did not get into Western States. The Western States lottery was December 3rd, and I did not get in this year. So we have I have a ticket in, or I have a lottery entry in for the Leadville 100 this year, and for Lake Sonoma 50, which is in Lake Sonoma is a 50 miler out in California in April, and Leadville is in August. Currently, I actually just had surgery for a hernia repair that I probably incurred during the Vermont 100 this summer, that I've kind of been nursing and then getting over. So I just hopped on the bike trainer literally for the first time in like 2.5 weeks yesterday after surgery. so I'm like itching to get back out there.
I'm sorry to hear that you're sorry to hear you're down and out, but hey, we all need a little bit of recovery, and you have a lot that you've done and a lot more that sounds like you're gonna do. So you better be very well healed up before you really try anything else.
Yeah. I mean, that's the goal. Hopefully everything works out. Hopefully the surgery corrected the issue, and then a little physical therapy, and everything should be good. And I get back out there to get back on the trails and get to my happy place and my meditative space. So.
I think of what is it? Is it Billy Madison or Happy Gilmore with the happy place? Is it the Jelly Bone, couple pitchers of beer? You know what I mean? Penguin and all. I forget which. They all kind of blend together. That does seem like a happy place. Maybe we all should shoot to go there. And if running 70 miles will get us there, I might even give that a try.
You should come anytime you want.
So, I don't know. Marathons, I do, like I said, a 4-hour marathon, I've done that once, and I've done several over 5 hours. If I tried this race, I might be that last finisher in 48 hours or whatever the cutoff is, a day past that. So we'll see. Thank you so much for being so gracious and sharing the story with us.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me on again.
Thanks for listening to the Endurance for Everyone podcast. If you have comments or questions for the show, send an email to teamE4E at enduranceforeveryone.com. And remember, swim calm, bike strong, and run steady.